Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Saturday, August 16th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, what we learned from Trump and Putin's meeting in Alaska, plus D.C. sues Trump and his administration, and why scientists find some whales are going silent. President Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska yesterday to reach a breakthrough on ending the war in Ukraine, but he left without a peace deal. I spoke with USA Today White House correspondent Franchesca Chambers for more. As always, I appreciate the time, Franchesca.
Thanks, Taylor.
So this meeting was highly anticipated. It appears that no concrete deal came out of it, Franchesca, as it pertains to Russia's war in Ukraine. What do we know, though, about which points were negotiated or agreed upon here? What have we heard, especially from President Trump himself after the summit? I know he also had some comments to Fox News anchor Sean Hannity after the meeting as well.
Well, Taylor, since the summit, President Trump gave a little bit more information. He suggested that prisoner swaps between the two countries came up, as well as security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, if you recall, there's been a long time discussion going on about whether Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO after the war is over, and Russia has ruled that out. Now, where the conversation has moved more recently, Taylor, is what European nations are calling a coalition of the willing that would be led by countries including the UK and France, and that would involve countries that are in NATO but not NATO itself, providing forces that could help be a security guarantee for Ukraine inside the country after the war is over.
And might we now see a shift to Trump's approach on secondary tariffs for countries that do energy business with Russia?
So, Taylor, he's already put those secondary tariffs, as he calls it, on India, and he hiked tariffs on Brazil for a host of reasons. Those two countries purchased Russian oil. What had been outstanding was whether he'd expand them to other major trading partners of Russia, namely China. Now, earlier this week, Taylor, we saw President Trump delay a tariff hike on China by 90 days if a deal isn't reached with the country. This is potentially significant because China is a major buyer of Russian oil.
So we saw Trump come out on Fox News with Hannity after this summit, Franchesca. How has Russian President Vladimir Putin framed the meeting himself?
Taylor, it was notable that the two leaders had been expected to have a joint news conference afterwards. But then what we saw happen was a statement to the media in which Vladimir Putin came out and said that there was some sort of an agreement. And President Trump was forced into the awkward position of saying that no deal had been reached. Now, it does sound like, since President Trump had his media interview later in the evening, that what was put forward was something that he would have to discuss with President Zelensky as well as European leaders. And President Trump later said that he thinks that Zelensky should accept a deal to end the war.
You know, this is the first summit between Putin and any U.S. president since Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022. Franchesca, does this set a new precedent? What might this mean for the relationship between these two leaders and these two countries going forward?
President Trump came out of the meeting sounding less frustrated with Vladimir Putin than he had been before he went into the meeting, when, as you'll recall, he had some choice words for the Russian leader, and he told him repeatedly that if he did not end the war, or at least come to a ceasefire agreement, that he would put those higher tariffs on Russia's trading partners. But as he left, President Trump said that it was a very warm meeting with Putin, and he talked up their relationship once again.
All right, we'll keep an eye on this over the coming days and weeks. Franchesca Chambers covers the White House for USA Today. Thank you, Franchesca.
Thanks, Taylor.
The District of Columbia has sued President Trump and his administration over his federal takeover of the city's police force, saying the president's brazen intervention was illegal and has wreaked operational havoc within the department. The suit says Trump exceeded his authority under the Home Rule Act of 1973 when he invoked a section of the federal law by declaring a local crime emergency to assert control over the Metropolitan Police Department. And the suit, filed in federal court in Washington, seeks a temporary restraining order to halt Trump's police takeover. The Department of Justice declined to comment. A 16th century document signed by Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortez has been found decades after it was stolen from Mexico's National Archives and was repatriated to the country this month, according to the FBI. Authorities believe the manuscript page was stolen in the 1980s or 90s, but no one will be charged in connection with the theft because the document had changed hands various times in the decades since its disappearance. The manuscript page is the second Cortez document the FBI has returned to the Mexican government, according to the agency. The FBI said the repatriation of the document was a result of a collaboration between them, the New York City Police Department, the U.S. Department of Justice, and the Mexican government. For decades, Mexico has sought the repatriation of cultural artifacts, including a delicate headdress thought to have belonged to Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II, currently housed in an Austrian museum. Scientists are finding that changing ocean conditions making whale prey scarce are causing some of the mammals to stop singing. I spoke with USA Today trending news reporter Michelle Del Rey to learn more about the research off the coast of California. Michelle, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.
So just starting with the basics, what did this study out earlier this year find?
This study found that there is a correlation between the rate that whales were singing and the amount of food in the ocean. So essentially, there was no food, whales were starving, and they didn't really have the energy to sing. However, that was only true for blue and fin whales, humpback whales, because they have the ability to switch between hunting and consuming krill, and smaller fish like anchovies. They didn't have that same issue, and their rates of singing actually increased throughout the 6 years when the study was conducted, which was between June 2015 and June 2021.
And this is principally off the California coast, correct?
Yes, this is all off the coast of California, and the researchers who conducted the study, for the most part, were from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute.
All right. And in terms of the methodology here, Michelle, how did they conduct this research?
So they used hydrophones, which are microphones that you basically put at the bottom of the ocean, and they conducted their own acoustic recordings throughout this research timeline, and they compared those recordings to fisheries data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
In terms of why this is happening, what did they find on that note?
So when they began this research, it was also around the same time as a marine heat wave called the blob was starting to peak. The blob was considered to be one of the worst marine heat waves in the North Pacific at the time, and that disrupted ocean circulation patterns, which impacted the number of cold, nutrient-rich waters that support krill, which obviously is a primary food source for these whales. So because there was no krill in the water, because the oceans were heating up, that is what caused this to happen.
And just more broadly, Michelle, what do these trends mean for populations of these massive whales? Are they threatened? Just what's the status?
It's not good. The ocean is continuing to heat up. We have had a couple other heat waves in the last few years, which it's not yet known, to what degree they have impacted whale populations. But we know anecdotally that heating ocean waters are not good for krill and also just different species of marine life, which whales are hunting and needing to consume. And there are some species of whales that rely on sea ice to forage for food. And, as sea ice continues to melt, it's harder for them to find it. So it's not only these specific species that are impacted in this study. We know that other whale species are at threat because of warming waters.
In terms of this conversation going forward, just how pessimistic are scientists? As you say, ocean temperatures continue to rise. What are you hearing specifically?
Well, I think it's pretty easy to be pessimistic when the outcome seems to be like there isn't really, any going back at this point. Like the ocean is continuing to heat up. But scientists, specifically NOAA, is still conducting research on how climate change will impact whales. Specifically, they are conducting routine scenario planning to address uncertainties, predict impacts, and prioritize mitigation and recovery actions. So, I'm not a marine biologist, but I would imagine at this point it's more of mitigating the negative impacts once climate change really does take hold and is a real threat, more than it is now to these populations.
All right, listeners can read more about this study with a link in today's show notes. Michelle Del Rey is a national trending news reporter with USA Today. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
And coming up tomorrow, how do you define American cuisine? The answer can be as complex as we are, but British food writer Felicity Cloak believes a lot of it has to do with our blending of cultures.
in Europe, we can gatekeep our cuisines a little bit. Whereas I found, with a few exceptions, you're very open to new ideas and your food culture is really fun.
My colleague Dana Taylor dives into Felicity's new book to explore what American cuisine is from an outsider's perspective. Catch that conversation right here tomorrow, beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on this feed. And thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And as always, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back Monday with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.